More than 3 decades since her rise from soap star to pop icon. Join us as we take a deep dive into the eras of Australia's Queen of Pop.
If people knew what it was that makes someone successful, it could be manufactured and you could turn anyone into that. I think it's a mixture of talent and luck.
From the locomotion to Padam Padam, this is Eras. Kylie Minogue.
Since 1987, Kylie Minogue had been the jewel in the crown of the Stock Aitken and Waterman hit factory. And for a long time, she had been happy to play her part.
I mean, I'm under a lot of pressure to write my own songs, but I think if that's what they're good at doing, and I'm good at singing and projecting an image, well, we should stick to our own areas, and that's why we're having so much success.
It was, without doubt, one of pop music's great collaborative relationships. The songs had instant commercial appeal, and 80s Kylie played the part of pop star effortlessly. Across a smorgasbord of number ones and top 10 hits, the marriage of Kylie's voice and image to Stock Aitken and Waterman's songwriting skills proved hard to beat. It seemed easy.
Well, they get an awful lot of undue criticism simply because they're successful. They're not magic, they don't touch something and it just works. They are where they are because of experience and being professional and being talented. And the pressure that they're under to keep coming up with hit songs is, I don't even know how many hit songs they've written, but for people trying to write one, that can be difficult. So I really respect and admire them.
But by 1992, things had changed. Kylie's latest album, Let's Get To It, had introduced audiences to a sexier, more sophisticated incarnation. But as long as she was with the Hit Factory, she'd struggle to shake off the image of smiley Charlene from Neighbours. At the same time, Kylie was embracing new musical possibilities, partly influenced by a much-publicised relationship with INXS frontman Michael Hutchence.
I never felt like I had blinkers on, but he took them off. Professionally, he was so supportive and he believed in me. And it was a time when so many people didn't.
By 1993, the word was out. Kylie had moved on. I'm Scott Mills. You're about to listen to brand new Era's Kylie Minogue. To hear longer episodes with vintage Kylie anthems and performances from the BBC archive, listen on BBC Sounds.
You had a very, very successful career with PWR. Why did you decide to stop using Stock Aitken and Waterman?
I didn't cut my contract short. My contract was up for renewal and it just seemed like time to move on. We had undeniable success with each other, but I think we'd done the best we could working with each other and it was just time to move on. They were on such a roll and I'm glad to have been part of that history. And they did so well, but now's a different time. We knew we could either follow along the same line that I'd been traveling and do a pop album, which would be the safe route to take, or we could do something a little different and just try everything, see what comes up.
Now that she was a free agent, the major record labels jostled for a stake in the Kylie business. But, showing the single-mindedness that was becoming a defining characteristic, she turned them down. All of them. Instead, she signed with Deconstruction Records, an indie label best known for catchy but credible dance music. And at this stage in her career, credibility was something Kylie thought about a lot. Here she is in conversation with the BBC's Tim Grundy, thinking back to her appearance at a 1990 tribute concert for John Lennon.
I felt very out of place because I was the only pop representative. There was people like Natalie Cole, Lou Reed, Lenny Kravitz, very credible people.
Do you not see yourself as being credible? You said they were credible. Do you not see yourself as...
Yeah, this was about 1.5 years ago, and it was very much a turning point for me. And it wasn't just my imagination, it was the audience. When I came out, there was like half of the audience cheered and half of them went,
You think you're winning those people over?
Yeah, slowly. Either that or I did before, but they wouldn't admit it.
By 1994, Kylie had released her 5th studio album. Its title, simply Kylie Minogue, told her audience that this was a total reset.
So you're now back with a new single and a new album. What can we expect?
The unexpected. Well, a different sounding album. It's not different to anything you've ever heard before. It's not like I'm doing something too outrageous, but at least it's very different.
Are you scared?
I'm really interested to know what people think of it. I mean, I don't even like describing it because I'd rather just let people listen to it and make of it what they will.
Stock Aitken and Waterman had been restrictive creatively, but it had also given Kylie a level of security. With the Hit Factory, she could feel confident. Chart success was the norm, not the exception. Now, there were no guarantees. She could either sink or swim. Rylan Clark.
Kylie's definitely an artist that takes risks. Going from pop princess to indie babe, it's quite the journey. But actually, I think it just goes to show how diverse she is and how malleable she is with herself. You know, she went through a stage of being bubblegum pop to Confide in Me, where, I mean, that video is one of my favourite videos ever of hers. So she's not frightened to change it up.
Confide in Me was the lead single from that first record with Deconstruction. An immediate critical and commercial success, it came with a sophisticated new visual style that signalled an eye-popping break from what had come before.
It's very futuristic and a little like pop art, but a bit more minimalist than that. I think it's a nice change from all the black and white that's been around and the grainy and, you know, every coffee commercial's got the camera going like this.
This new Kylie was nobody's puppet, but that didn't mean she'd be going it alone. Kylie's always been a keen collaborator, and the 90s were witness to some of her most interesting team-ups. Around the release of Confide in Me, she spoke to the BBC about some of the huge names that helped her to craft her latest reinvention.
I've worked with M People, Saint Etienne, Brothers in Rhythm, actually mainly with Brothers in Rhythm, most of my albums done by them, and Farley Heller.
And 1995 saw one of Kylie's most left-field team-ups yet.
Were you quite surprised to get the call from Nick Cave?
Yeah, it really was. I had heard through mutual friends a couple of times over a few years that, oh, you know, I'm a friend of Nick Cave and he's really interested in doing something with you.
Nick Cave, singer with Australian gothic alt-rock band Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, was about as far away from Stock Aitken and Waterman as it's possible to get. But, like millions of others, he held a bit of a torch for Kylie.
As it turns out, he had written quite a few songs for me and wanted to wait till he got the right one, and it turned out to be something that I'm so immensely proud of and I'm really inspired by.
That song was Where the Wild Roses Grow, a ghostly murder ballad that contrasted Kylie's legendary sweetness with Nick's gothic edge. David Tennant.
I think looking over the sort of trajectory of all the things she's done, it now seems perfectly rational. But at the time, it was very surprising, you know, to go from I Should Be So Lucky to the stuff she did with Nick Cave all felt like almost alarming.
Nick Cave joined Kirsty Walk to look back on a controversial and now iconic moment in both artists' careers.
I've worked with a lot of people. I've sung with Johnny Cash, but I really think it was that record I did with Kylie Minogue, which I really hold in a very special place in my heart because we both took an enormous risk to do that. She was instructed, I believe, by the people around her, don't go near this guy. You just don't want to be associated with Nick Cave, especially back then. You know, I wasn't in showroom condition, shall we say. But it was also people saying, you're going to do a record with Kylie Minogue, you must be crazy. There was a potential for disaster for both of us, but she just entered into that with just a whole lot of love, and it was really an amazing thing, and it worked really well, you know, so we've remained, even though we don't see each other very often, we love each other, I think, genuinely.
But any attempt by Kylie to play against type was criticised in some corners of her audience.
When Nick performed with me at Tea in the Park a couple of years ago, he said there was these fans, there must have been fans of mine in the front row that were kind of, you know, giving him the big slice of the neck motion, and he's carrying on singing, thinking, oh my God.
Beverly Knight.
I think the biggest stumbling block is expectation from record labels and from the British music industry itself, gatekeeping what you should put out and what you shouldn't. And again, a lot of that comes down to the stereotypes, you know, the expectation that Kylie should remain cutesy, fluffy, poppy. You know, we don't want you to be indie Kylie. We want you to stay in this lane. And that thing about staying in one's lane is the biggest stumbling block of all.
Kylie doesn't do staying in her lane. And at this point in her career, she was exploring all her options. And there were a lot of them. Remember, Kylie's a woman of many talents. In 1994, a year before that gorgeously moody duet with Nick Cave, Kylie had starred with Belgian hardman Jean-Claude Van Damme in Street Fighter, Edward R. Pressman Productions' adaptation of Capcom's video game series, directed by Stephen E. D'Souza.
We were able to get Bison to break radio silence.
Street Fighter was a commercial success, raking in $100 million worldwide. But despite beefing up for the role, Kylie wasn't destined for action stardom, as she was more than happy to admit on Graham Norton's couch back in 2018.
When you did that, did you kind of think, yeah, Kylie Minogue, action star, I'm going to do this?
No, I was mistaken.
But
the training was fun, yeah. Look, I'm so puny, they had to really build me up.
And did you keep it up?
No.
Okay.
Perhaps Hollywood could wait. Because in the 90s, Kylie was on a journey, a road leading to the best version of herself yet. Dermot O'Leary sat down with Kylie for the BBC's Real Stories, a look back at some all-time career highlights.
Another part of her career I was really interested in and she was super honest about was when she kind of came out the other side of that and teamed up with Nick Cave and Nick Cave said to her, don't be embarrassed of your early stuff. Your early stuff's great.
Rather than pulling her towards the dark side, Kylie credits Nick Cave with turning her back on to the joy of pop.
Actually, he was so instrumental in me, you know, the penny dropping and being ready to do that when we're at the Poetry Olympics.
Held at the Royal Albert Hall in 1996, the Poetry Olympics were billed as the mega gig of the century. Think 9 solid hours of music and verse featuring some of the world's coolest people. Nick Cave, Damon Albarn and Patti Smith were just 3 of the tens of celebrities and underground artists taking part. And Nick Cave encouraged Kylie to take the stage for an impromptu performance. For some, this was the moment that Kylie made her claim to a place among British indie music's great and good.
He asked me to recite the words to I Should Be So Lucky. Mm-hmm. Not my usual audience. I was in a tracksuit, no bra. I think I had short hair. I was just, you know, it was that phase. And so I just said, in my imagination,
there is no hesitation.
I felt this ripple, this murmur through the audience, and I just, in that split second, I thought, we're good, this is going to work.
I should be so lucky. Lucky, lucky, lucky. I should be so lucky in love. Thank you.
The lyrics to I Should Be So Lucky had been written in less than a day by the Stock, Aitken and Waterman team in 1987 on Kylie's first trip to the UK. A lot had changed since then, and Kylie's ironic performance could have been read as part of her ongoing rejection of the shiny, happy PWL poster girl. But Kylie remembers it differently.
It felt like in that moment I was meeting the girl that I'd been trying to kind of get away from.
10 years into a successful music career, releasing her music on her terms, she was able to reconcile both aspects of herself. The girl who was Charlene and the independent artist who could finally appreciate her.
And it was her kind of actually embracing the pop star.
In 1997, Kylie sat down with Radio 1's Joe Wiley to look back on her journey so far.
You started off obviously in pop music with Stock, Aitken and Waterman. How do you look back on all that? With regrets or with...
No, no regrets. I think when I was closer to it, like a few years ago, I was running as fast as I could away from it. But yeah, now I realise to have been part of that is amazing.
That same year, Kylie drops Impossible Princess, her second album with Deconstruction, and her most ambitious and creatively involved record to date. Pop star and Kylie collaborator Jessie Ware can set the scene.
I mean, Kylie's living in Chelsea, in London. She's seeing the magnitude of Britpop, Oasis, Blur, Manic Street Preachers. I mean, it's kind of the coolest place to be, especially within music. Why wouldn't she dip into that when she can and have a taste of it? I think it was a really interesting move for her.
Here's Kylie speaking to Ali McCoist and Fred McCauley at the time of the launch.
Do you think you're trying to appeal to a different type of audience now?
I'm not exactly sure who it is I'm targeting the album towards. I'm just trying to do something that was honest, and it's the first time I've done a lot of writing, so it's basically a representation of whatever we came across within that 2-year period that we made the album. But I'm looking forward to the challenge of putting together a show with the new material, and I would be doing I Should Be So Lucky and Locomotion, and there's a certain amount of irony that I can incorporate in those, which I already have done on a couple of occasions, so it's brilliant.
Kylie had made it clear that she was willing to keep pushing at the boundaries of her image.
And you're working with the people who are at the top end of the business, the Manic Street Preachers, Nick Cave. It's fantastic.
I'm just astounded, constantly astounded that it has been 10 years and I've had all these opportunities, and they keep coming and working with such brilliant people, because I think normally the public tend to feel the need to categorize you and pigeonhole you. So, you know, I can't believe that they've allowed me to make all these different changes in 10 years.
Some Kind of Bliss, the lead single from Impossible Princess, was co-written by James Dean Bradfield and Sean Moore of the Manic Street Preachers. They introduced Kylie to new ways of working creatively.
It was so refreshing to hand over the responsibility to someone else, like James Dean Bradfield, who is so respected and such a great songwriter. For him to be doing something, especially for me, was great. I gave him the lyrics for it and he wrote the song around it. So actually he took the lyrics from 2 different songs that I had, which wouldn't have crossed my mind. And the way that this track starts, I keep thinking, this is a Stone song. This is not a Kylie song. Like, I never imagined to be sounding that way, but it all seems to make sense.
Like Nick Cave, the Manics had admired Kylie from afar for years.
Again, with James Dean Bradfield and the Manics, there was another history with that. They had wanted me to sing on a song with them in '91, which I didn't know about until a year ago. As far as I can imagine, it just didn't get through the big doors at PWL. I hardly imagine that they would have said, oh yeah, great idea. Let's get Kylie to do a song with the Manics.
Do you ever get cynical about that, looking back at your past?
I did for a while, but that was a few years ago. And I think now that I'm far enough removed from it, my feelings get more and more fond about that time, which is really great. I think the older I get, the better I am at being myself in the public eye.
But don't get any ideas. Impossible Princess wasn't a rock record. There was far more to it than that, as Kylie told Joe Wiley at the time.
It's pretty eclectic, I guess, because it was made over a 2-year period and I was absorbing influences from all over the place and trying to find my feet in as far as my own style. Yeah. And so there's the manic stuff, which is Some Kind of Bliss and I Don't Need Anyone, that are more guitars and big pop moments that are fantastic. And then there's more songs that are dance. There's a song by Rob Dugan that's, dare I say, kind of a bit trip-hoppy, but not. And I was a bit worried that maybe there's too many different styles, but I tried to make the album a representation of the time that it took to make it, and that's how I ended up.
There were still people who weren't buying this new Kylie, but hearing her talk to Joe, you get the sense that she's determined to trust in her own vision.
Because people are kind of, accusing you of jumping on bandwagons. So if you're saying that you've done stuff that is trip-hoppy and dance and then guitar, is that a fair accusation, or how would you justify that?
Oh, I've had far more unfair accusations over the years.
Yeah.
I mean, they always have to label it with something or other, and I can very clearly see where they're coming from, but I don't think I'm jumping on a bandwagon. A lot of those things have come to me during this process, and that's what happens with music. Something that's underground becomes a bit more commercial, and then a new underground comes. And
it's actually quite positive, isn't it? Just to be kind of a bit more experimental instead of just being one track. That's kind of the point that people miss, I think.
I felt it was time to stick my neck out a bit and,
do what you wanted to do.
Try, and the trouble is I like doing so many different things, and if I had to choose one song on the album or one style of song and do a whole album like that, I think that would be more of a lie than doing what I felt like doing.
let's talk about the fact that she was only in her 20s when she was making that.
Jessie Ware.
That's a really brave record to make, particularly when you could be very comfortable within a pop world. I think that's amazing. She'd been a pop princess for a very long time. And why not try some things and show everyone that it's not plain and simple?
Singer-songwriter Jack Savoretti.
I think Kylie Minogue has always done whatever she wants. I think that's kind of where she's earned her stripes, in the sense that, like, that's so hard to do over a space of time in this industry, to actually, like, stick to your guns.
That spirit led to some of Kylie's most avant-garde work. 20 years on, Kylie joined Dermot O'Leary to look back on a period of exciting creative possibilities.
So were you just up for absolutely anything at that time?
I was into it. I was trying it.
But if you didn't experiment, you probably wouldn't be doing what you're doing now if you'd have carried on doing the same pop music.
I think I've always done that, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, but...
It's kind of the point, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
But that requires an awful lot of holding your nerve.
Some bottle.
But while Kylie was more creatively fulfilled than ever, her new direction, or directions if you like, weren't translating to the same kind of chart success as her more mainstream output. Some Kind of Bliss, co-written by the Manics, had been her first single to miss the UK Top 20. Jack Savoretti.
And I think the beauty about Kylie is the proof is in the pudding. Like, some stuff hasn't been as successful as the stuff before. And she still carries on then doing what she wants on the next one.
In 1998, Kylie parted ways with Deconstruction Records. Her new home, EMI's legendary Parlophone Records, would give her a leg up back to the top of the charts. Here's Kylie with Steve Wright in the year 2000.
I mean, what we read was that the record company and you parted and thought, oh dear, that's bad news for Kylie, what's she going to do now? But everybody knew that you would be back within a few months.
I felt that. It was very encouraging. The general way that people would approach me and talk to me about that was to say, well, you know, you just need to do this, you just need some better songs.
In her 32nd year, Kylie was on the cusp of her third, and so far, most iconic era.
Would you say that it's going back to your pop roots, or are you still nice and cool and dancey?
I would say that we've achieved a nice balance, which is what we set out to do. Take a bit of the old Kylie and the sound and the flavour that people have been waiting for. They've been very patient. That's the sense I get from my audience, from people I meet in the street.
Yeah.
And even people that I would have thought didn't like pop music, when they heard I'd signed with Parlophone, just said, please make a pop record. Go on, we're waiting.
Yeah.
Come on, Kylie, you know.
Next time on Era's Kylie Minogue, we're taking a sequined plunge into one of pop's great imperial phases.
And there's a reason she stays and remains relevant, because she works with the kind of zeitgeist of what is feeling right in the world.
A time when 50p could buy you the hottest look of the year.
I almost sent the Gold Hot Pants out to do their own interviews, because at the time it was all about the Gold Hot Pants. Fine, you go out and you do the work, okay? All I ever do is talk about you.
And when anyone who was anyone wanted a sprinkle of that Kylie stardust.
I basically told my manager I don't want to do any more remixes unless it's Kylie Minogue. And about a week or 10 days later, he came to me and just said, what do you think about working with her?
That's next time on Era's Kylie Minogue.
For a more in-depth look at Kylie's eras, head to BBC Sounds, where you can hear a version of this podcast in spatial audio and packed with Kylie's music and exclusive live performances.